Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, our politics panel on fallout from the court decision putting the future of the separation petition in question. But first, setting the stage.
We'll announce tomorrow an implementation agreement which includes strengthening industrial carbon pricing to send clear investment signals and to reward decarbonization.
The Prime Minister this morning confirming Friday's anticipated MOU update and that the federal and provincial governments are prepared to advance a potential pipeline to transport at least 1 million barrels of what Mark Kenney calls low-emission Alberta oil a day to new markets. Joining us now, Adam Legge, President of the Business Council of Alberta. Mr. Legge, good to see you, sir. Welcome back.
Good to see you, Michael. Thank you.
All right. It certainly appears the federal and Alberta governments are a whole lot closer to getting the pipeline MOU over the finish line, details of which we'll find out tomorrow on Friday. But what's your read on the signal this sends to Alberta's business community?
Well, clearly we've seen a sea change in this federal government's belief about our natural resource sector and growing our export capacity to other markets, which is a welcome change from the previous administration. So that is a tremendously positive signal. It's a sector that largely has been held down for the better part of more than a decade and just really has not been able to contribute to Canada's success and prosperity. So we're very happy to see that we have a federal government that really understands the importance of our energy sector and the ability for it to contribute to the prosperity of Canadians. And we'll see what the agreement says in terms of some of the finer details.
Yeah, details to come, but might it be enough to tip the scales on investor confidence, even though there are still potential hurdles for a pipeline going forward, lack of a commercial proponent, challenges that may come with consultation?
Well, I think overall industry will be disappointed with the fact that there still will be an industrial carbon price. There has been a lot of call to ensure Canada can be competitive in that we don't really have any other global centers or nations that are oil exporting nations that are putting a price on their oil at this time. So this is a bit of an uncompetitive position. The devil will be in the details in terms of the full package, in terms of what does that mean versus, say, some of the offsets, credits, incentives, et cetera, for the carbon credits. So there may be some creative work that's been done to make a more enticing package, but at the end of the day, it's important to recognize this is a pure cost to industry, which will then make sure that they'll evaluate the opportunities in front of them with respect to what that price looks like. And then after that, I think, it really is about if the decision is that they can produce more and that they can fill additional pipelines, is the regulatory environment going to be supportive of a very fast-tracked and expedited pipeline approval? Will those projects be protected from litigation? And frankly, will the provincial and federal governments work together to make sure that we can actually produce more and grow production of oil to fill those pipelines?
Where does this turn a page where there may be any uncertainty over the status of a possible referendum on separation?
Well, the message that we've been sharing with Ottawa is that Albertans are frustrated, and they've been frustrated for quite some time. And so the MOU is a signal that the federal government understands the importance of Alberta's contribution to the economy, largely through its resource sector. But the MOU in and of itself will likely be insufficient to really be enough of a message to Albertans that Ottawa is serious. It's a very important message that it sends, and that it does understand and appreciate its energy sector. But there are a variety of other long-standing grievances that Albertans have, everything from equalization and the amount that Alberta contributes to federal coffers, etc. So I do think Ottawa does need to think a little bit more about what a message to Alberta that it's important, it wants to remain in the Federation, but I think this will go a long way to addressing some of the concerns that many Albertans have about Alberta's position in the Federation.
Adam, are you able to give us a sense of the degree of impact at this point, the whole separation dialogue? Is it having an impact on Alberta's business community to a degree?
It's very dependent upon the industry and the stage in many companies' life cycles. We have heard from some of our members that it is impairing their ability to do business or their ability to attract investment. So, I mean, frankly, any conversation of separation and the uncertainty that it creates is not a good look for Alberta. It's not positive for the business community. It's not positive for the investment climate. But given that it is still an uncertainty, and yesterday's court ruling casts further uncertainty about separation, there really it hasn't been a widespread implication or challenge to Alberta's economy. It's still a hypothetical in many ways. So I think people will be waiting to see whether a referendum question actually is going to be voted on, and B, what the outcome of that would be. But overall, it's not a positive for our economy or our investment climate. But I would say, from what I've heard, the number of companies that are actually facing challenges right now are limited.
Okay, now your organization out just this week with its spring economic snapshot for Alberta. How do you see our province faring compared to the rest of the country?
Well, really, the economic picture for Alberta has changed materially as a result of the situation in the Middle East. And frankly, that's not through any work of our own. It's just the fact that so much of our economy is tied to the commodity markets, and particularly oil prices. And so the higher the oil prices are, the more the economic value that is generated through that, and hence the more royalties and the more taxes that are paid. And so the economic outlook for the province has improved on the back of a higher oil price globally. So, I mean, it's not through any endeavors of Alberta's making that are really going to be about driving the economy. There's some positive developments there in terms of everything from defense and advanced manufacturing and technology. But the real story around Alberta's economic prosperity shift from when Premier delivered the last budget is really the story around oil prices. So, I mean, that can change. It can go south as quickly as it went north. And so we have to be thoughtful that this is not necessarily a long-term shift or the uncertainty around that. And so we need to be very thoughtful about what we do with those additional revenues that the provincial government is taking in right now.
All right. Well, we'll have to leave it there for time. As always, appreciate your time, Mr. Legge. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Michael.
Adam Legge is president of the Business Council of Alberta. From a judge overturning approval of the separation referendum petition to newfound momentum behind Alberta's push for a pipeline. Time now for tonight's politics panel. And joining us this evening, Donna Kennedy-Glantz, former MLA and cabinet minister, now columnist with the National Post, and Dwayne Bratt, political scientist at Mount Royal University. Good evening to you both. And let's begin with reaction to a judge overturning Election Alberta's approval of a referendum petition on separation.
This judgment, we think that there has been an error in law, which is why we're going to be appealing it, and we think it's anti-democratic. We want to make sure that that citizens who participate in good faith in this process have an expectation that the Elections Alberta is going to validate their signatures.
It is not the right thing to do, so I really hope that the Premier will make the right decision and simply say, separatists, look, I acknowledge that you feel the way you feel, but simply your question cannot be put on a referendum in Alberta.
The judge decided secession from Canada would impact Treaties 7 and 8, and therefore sided with First Nations, adding the bill passed by the government in December to amend the citizen-initiated referendum process required a duty to consult, but that didn't happen. Donna, by suggesting an error in law, pointing out that it was a single judge who made the decision, a decision she calls anti-democratic, what message is the Premier sending to Albertans by signaling the government's willingness to appeal?
I think it's a very clear message that she's frustrated with the decision. And I actually have read that decision, 37 pages. My eyes are still crossed. It was so technical. But the upshot of it is that she's right. This petition has kind of been quashed, and it's going to be up to the government to be able to table a question or not in the referendum and in October. And the second issue, which is a huge one, is the duty to consult about having this petition. I mean, we haven't even got a vote and they have a duty to consult. It's all kind of odd. I find it odd as a lawyer.
Dwayne, proponents behind the separatist petition state flat out that they expect the Premier to call a referendum regardless. How tricky a position is Danielle Smith in here politically?
Oh, a very tricky situation, absolutely, because it was a benefit to her politically that it was outside groups that were supporting separatism. While she, on the other hand, kept with her refrain about a sovereign Alberta, a united Canada, and was working with Mark Carney on a grand bargain. And so now that it's been quashed, she has a very tough decision. Does she make it a government referendum, in which case the government is now the face and the sponsor of this? How do you say, Canada can work? Look at my MOU with Mark Carney as evidence of that. At the same time, I'm going to sponsor a referendum to pull Alberta out of Canada because Canada cannot work. If, on the other hand, she does not intervene and just says, let's let the legal process play itself out, we're going to appeal, then you're going to have separatists possibly mobilizing against her. And in fact, some of them have already said that they would try to take over the UCP. They already have a significant foothold in the UCP and remove Danielle Smith as leader if she does not promote a separatist referendum. So she's in a box here. She's in a real bind. And I can see why she is so frustrated.
Donna, during Wednesday's news conference, the Premier repeated a couple of times that she will be listening to caucus and cabinet. What does that suggest about the degree of authority, power, supremacy of caucus and the party itself in this matter?
Actually, it is a cabinet decision at the end of the day. She's referred this question, in fact, Thomas Lukaszik's question, that petition question, is being reviewed by a committee. She's going back to that committee. She's going to caucus to talk about it and to cabinet. I mean, they have two choices. I don't see it quite like Dwayne does, but then people, this is a very confusing issue, and I think there will be a lot of confusion. Her cabinet can decide to table their own referendum question as it complies with the Clarity Act and is a clear question, or they can decide to table Thomas Lukaszik's Forever Canada petition. That's an option as well. As for the separatists and, raising heck within the UCP party, I mean, yes, of course that's going to happen, especially if this referendum goes ahead and doesn't get the vote. But in the meantime, I'm not sure that they want to blow up their chances of having a referendum in October. So I suspect that there'll be a bit of a truce until the October referendum date.
Dwayne, the Goodstoney First Nation was among Indigenous communities responding last night, stating that should the Premier attempt to bypass this ruling and force her own separation question onto the ballot, Goodstoney First Nation will treat it as a direct attack on our people and treaties, and further, that we will not allow our rights to be ignored or erased. What does the Smith government need to weigh now in how it moves forward?
Oh, there's all sorts of things, and this has been flagged even before the lawsuit from Indigenous groups about the complications of the duty to consult and the fact that these treaties were signed well before Alberta even became a province. I am, unlike Donna, I'm not a lawyer, but I was not surprised by this ruling, given the interim injunction banning Elections Alberta from certifying the signatures, but also with the decision last fall of Justice Feasby, who said that this was a violation of the duty to consult. Even Jeff Rath, the legal counsel for the Alberta Prosperity Project, has said that the duty to consult does matter. The question is, at what stage of the process? Does it occur during the signature gathering? Does it occur during the referendum? Does it occur if there's a yes vote in the referendum involving the negotiations on secession? At what point does it enter? And I think that's at the heart of this dispute, is when do you need to consult? And I will also say it would have been very difficult for Stay Free Alberta to do consultation when the purpose of consultation is with the Crown, not some outside group. So I don't even know if they were capable prior to now to do proper consultation.
Donna, the government will be glad the spring sitting is over, or does this remain high on the radar as we roll into the summer months?
No, I think everybody's probably relieved spring sitting is over, but I think it's going to be a very busy summer. The NDP have already told us they're going to be door knocking, and now I had an interview last night with Keith Wilson, who's a spokesperson for the Separatists, and they're going to be amping up door knocking. I think we're going to have a lot of activity going on over the summer, and a lot of serious decisions to be pipeline MU, 1st of July. Hopefully, and all these other things with this court decision and the government's decision what they're going to table in that October referendum. So I don't think things are going to die down in Alberta very much over the summer.
All right, time for us to take a bit of a break, but when we come back, clearing the path to that pipeline. More from our politics panel in a moment. Welcome back. Confirmation today from the Prime Minister. He will be in Calgary on Friday to, in his words, advance a potential pipeline to transport at least 1 million barrels of Alberta oil a day to new markets. Dwayne, the PM also said this morning, as a prerequisite to the project, they're progressing pathways, creating an entirely new industry with carbon capture. How significant an announcement is in the offering here tomorrow?
Oh, I think it's a very important announcement. Most of the leaks that we've seen about it have been around the industrial carbon tax and the increase in that tax and the time frame of that is occurring. But I've heard nothing of what has emerged around carbon capture, utilization, and storage, which was also part of the MOU back in November, which they should have put details in that we haven't heard from. So I'm hoping that on Friday we get a lot more clarity on that particular point.
Donna, to what degree do you see Alberta now in the driver's seat where this federal-provincial relationship is concerned?
Well, I think this is a significant step and one we're all watching. Alberta has to be able to attract an investor in that pipeline, but Carney has not made it clear that EB doesn't have a veto, or the First Nations ultimately don't have a veto on this pipeline, and there's a lot of work ahead. The other very big question, and Dwayne alluded to it, is the cost of the carbon capture and utilization project, which is significant. In the United States, there's federal national money that goes into that, not to carbon pricing. In Canada, who's going to pay for that? And it's something that has to be invested in before, the pipeline goes ahead. So money's got to go on the table here, big money, before a pipeline is approved and anything gets put in the ground. So I think there's a lot of conditionality here that has to be worked out. And I don't think the companies have been absolutely clear on where they stand on this.
Dwayne, how far do you think Mark Carney might be pushing the left flank of the Liberal Party in pushing this now forward?
Oh, I think he's maybe possibly even pushing them out of the party. He feels comfortable on his left side with the collapse of the federal NDP, but also because the situation in Canada has fundamentally changed as a result of our relationship with the United States and Trump's tariffs. That is what I think is driving Mark Carney, is the realization that we need to diversify away from the United States and hence build a pipeline to BC, which will allow for Asian exports. So Stephen Guilbeault, the former environment minister, quit cabinet last November over the initial MOU. I'm not sure Carney shed any tears over Guilbeault doing that. Now, Guilbeault has been quite active as a backbencher. I wonder if he walks away from the party entirely. But then the question is, does anyone else follow him? And I don't think they will. I think there are environmentalists still within the Liberal caucus, but they look at the sea change in Canada over the last several years, and they look at Mark Carney. And Mark Carney is a winner. Mark Carney's doing well in the polls. Mark Carney now has a majority government. I'm not sure they're about to rock the boat.
Donna, we heard from the head of the Business Council of Alberta off the top on driving investor confidence. How far do you see Friday's developments going to convincing industry to now get behind a pipeline?
Oh, I think industry is really, it's a complicated question. And I think industry more broadly in Alberta is quite positive and encouraged by this and wants to see this. But I think that the companies that are involved in the oil sands are probably not meeting eye to eye on this. This is a very tricky decision to be made, and I don't know exactly what the outcome's going to be. And then you've got other provinces. I mean, check out Scott Moe in Saskatchewan basically said, we're not doing industrial carbon tax in Saskatchewan, like flat out. So I still think this is wobbly, and the question of competitiveness is still one that's there. And I believe it's an issue for Canadian investors. Do you want to invest in the oil patch where there's a carbon tax when you can invest in the carbon? You can invest in the sector in other jurisdictions, including the United States, where you don't have this kind of a burden on the investor. So I think it's still, there's a lot to shake out here.
Dwayne, there's certainly overlap with our first topic tonight. So how far do you see Friday's announcement of the pipeline MOU going to tempering separatist sentiment?
So when I mentioned the international threat that was driving Carney, I think there was a domestic threat as well, and that was Alberta separatism. Now, they have tried to downplay that, but you cannot tell me that that was not part of the overall context. Reaching this agreement will not satisfy the hardcore separatists. They want to leave today, tomorrow, yesterday. They have a variety of causes, a lot of objectives, and no matter what issue you feel you've dealt with, they'll just move on to something else. Whether that's Senate, whether that's immigration, whether that's guns, whether that is COVID. But there's a larger group, 20 to 25% of the population, that does not want to leave Canada, but has had concerns with Ottawa and some of the other provinces. I think this agreement will help blunt some of that. And so I think that's another driver for Carney, which is why in the last point I said it's going to make it really difficult for Smith if she goes ahead with a government referendum on separation. On the one hand, to say, see, I can make an agreement with Carney and Canada can work and federalism can work. But on the other hand, I'm going to sponsor a referendum to pull Alberta out of Canada because Canada can't work. There's an inherent contradiction there, which is why Smith is in a jam.
Last 20 seconds to you, Donna. Do you expect this to present enough of a case to Albertans not to separate?
I think it will for people who are opposed to separation and are looking for reasons. But I disagree with Dwayne. I think that Thomas Lukaszik's democracy has already been put in place and people have expectations about a referendum, other referendum questions. So I don't see that as a big problem for this premier.
All right. We'll have to leave it there. Great to see you both. Thank you.
See you.
Now, here are a few responses to a recent story posted by CTV News, and it's about a judge throwing out the Alberta separation petition. Scotty starts us off with this. Well, I guess we'll just throw democracy out the window. Colleen, on the other hand, says, I hope taxpayers are not paying to appeal this. Bam weighs in with this. If Alberta separation goes through, I'm moving out. Canman writes, this judge is playing with fire. 300,000 is not a small number at all. And Mabel's take take on it? Sigh. These are such hard, divisive times. Have your say. Email us anytime at comments@albertaprimetime.com. Coming up tomorrow, a spring sitting filled with conflict and contention has come to a close, and we'll get opposition perspective from NDP Deputy Leader Rocky Pancholi Friday at 6 and 11. Until then, have a great evening, everyone, from all of us at Alberta Primetime. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time.